In this video, I'm going to cover 6 books to read if you want to change your life, and mainly if you want to start an online business for yourself. And if you're new here, my name is Max. I run a social media marketing agency, and I also help other people to start their own marketing agencies and go from zero to at least $10,000 per month in 90 days or less. I have a free course. I don't charge $1 for it. We have a community, a Facebook group, also weekly Q&A calls, all for free. And the goal is just to help as many people as I can to change their life, achieve freedom, and live a life that they want to live, essentially. And on this channel, normally I do a lot of tutorials regarding how to start, run, and grow a social media marketing agency, but today's video is going to be a little bit different. I basically got a request from somebody in the comment section asking about what books I like to read, so I thought I would make a video about it. So I basically have a list of 6 different books that completely changed my life. So without further ado, let's just dive into book number 1. And the first book I want to talk about, it's actually 2 books, but it's really 1 book. And it has been called the Entrepreneurial Bible. Maybe you've heard about it. It's Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. So this is the first book that I've read, and I actually have a very interesting story about this book that I will tell you here in a sec. The other book is The Law of Success by Napoleon Hill, and this is the one by Orne Publishing. This book is actually pretty hard to get. A lot of people love this book. They swear by this book. I've read both of them. I love both of them. But to be completely honest with you, I always get back to Think and Grow Rich. And this book it's easy to get your hands on. As you can see, I have a ton of notes here, and I underline stuff as well. And actually right now I'm reading this book every single night. And the story behind this book actually goes back to 2014 when I was stuck in a job that I hated. I didn't know what to do with my life, and I was pretty much desperate. It felt like my life was already planned out. I went to school, I get a job, and then I get a better job, and then I get my pension, and then I die. And it felt so boring, essentially. And I was dating a girl back then, and her father was an entrepreneur. And I didn't really know what an entrepreneur was back then, to be completely honest with you. And the first time that I met her father, he basically asked me, okay, Max, so what do you do? And I told him, yeah, I work at this warehouse. And he was like, okay, but next summer you're not working there, right? And I was actually pretty offended by that, because it was kind of like an implication that, hey man, you're stuck in a job that sucks. And I knew that, but when he told me that, I kind of got a bit offended, and I got a bit pissed, actually. But that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I started to think what I wanted to do in my life, and I started to text people and ask people online in different forums, like, how do I become an entrepreneur? What is an entrepreneur? How much money can you earn for yourself? How do you start a business? And one guy, he told me, it was like, Max, have you heard about Think and Grow Rich? And I was like, no. Okay, you should buy Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, read that. That's the Entrepreneurial Bible. And I did, and this book changed my life. And the reason it changed my life is because the main thing in this book is, first of all, it helps you to see the possibilities, and it also helps you to dream and put up a goal, and basically write down your goals and then review those goals every morning and every night. It basically helps you to keep your eye on the ball, and it also talks about a ton of different habits that you can implement in your life if you want to start to think like the wealthy people do, or at least get the right thinking in place if you want to become an entrepreneur. So there's no mistake why I have this book on the top of my list, because this is a book that I still read over and over and over and over again every single night. I'm basically reading the same chapter on auto suggestion every single night. I read it over and over again. So if you haven't read this book, definitely buy it and read it. If you already read this book once, read it again and again and again. So that's the first book on my list, the most powerful one, the one that I recommend the most. The second book that I have on my list, it's a little bit more of a practical book, and it's called Deep Work, and it's also written by Cal Newport. And there's a ton of books being written, right, about different routines and stuff and habits that you can implement into your life, and I've read a ton of them. But this book talks about a routine or habit that I actually use every single day, and I don't skip it at all. And it's basically about deep work. So it talks about in this work how to get into the zone and how to get into focus and how to do deep work. And he also talks about if you work in a distracted mode, essentially, like your phone is ringing, or you're checking your email inbox all the time, or you're working in an office where people come and interrupt you all the time, or you check your social media, or you text people, or you call people, it's going to be impossible for you to do deep work. And deep work is 100 times more powerful. And he basically talks about doing one thing at a time for at least 3 hours or potentially 4 hours in a block period. So basically what I do every single morning is that I wake up, I don't check my email inbox, I've turned off all of the notifications on my phone, I don't check that. And as mentioned, I don't want to check my email inbox, because when you run a business, there's always some fires to put out, and I don't want to clutter my mind with that immediately in the morning. I want to do some high level thinking and get the most important work done first. What I do, I sit down with my computer and I do one thing for 3 to 4 hours in a block period. And I can pump out as much work in 3 hours in one day as I did an entire week before, or even more than that. And the work also becomes fun because you get into the zone. It's almost like you forget about time and space because you're so into your work. And that's when you get your creative ideas. That's when you find new solutions. That's when you solve problems better. So yeah, that's basically what it talks about in this book. It's not really necessary for you to buy the book if you don't want to. Deep work, basically block out 3 to 4 hours single morning and just do one thing at a time and block out all distractions. That's basically the summary of the book, but if you want to buy it and read it, highly recommend. But the most important thing, definitely test and implement what he talks about in this book. It has completely changed my life and my business. The third book that I want to talk about is written by a person you maybe have heard about. He's a big YouTube celebrity and is growing more and more on his social media channels. He's also a super successful businessman, and it's Alex Hormozi, and he's written this book called $100 Million Offers. And here on my YouTube channel, I reference this book actually quite a bit in the comment sections to people when they ask me like, how do I select a niche? How do I craft an offer? What market should I go for? And sometimes I kind of just list out and kind of reiterate what I've learned from this book, or just tell them like, hey, just go and buy Alex Hormozi's book and buy it on Audible as well, and then listen to it while you read it. You're going to be able to complete it super fast. He's actually writing his book himself, Alex, and I really like his writing style. And as you can see, it's pretty big pages, but pretty big letters as well. It's very actionable. It's very to the point. He's an entrepreneur himself. There's no bullshit in there. Like what he talks about here is actually proven techniques that he have used to actually grow his net worth and his businesses to generate more than $100 million per year in revenue. So the title, $100 Million Offers, it's no bullshit. It's a real thing. So if you want to learn about offers and how to start a business, how to select a niche and a service that I talk a lot about on this channel as well, Alex Hormozi is the guy. I can also highly recommend that you check out his YouTube channel. You can just Google him or YouTube him or TikTok or on Instagram. He's pretty much everywhere. He's awesome. He's also running a business called Acquisition.com, and his business model is awesome. Basically what he's doing is that he's teaching people for free on the internet how to start, run, and grow their own businesses, and he want to help people to get at least to $3 million per year, and then via his business Acquisition.com, he's then investing in businesses making at least $3 million per year and help them to go to 10 or even further than that. So yeah, that's basically his business model. Help as many people for free as possible, and then once they have got there or once they have a successful business, you basically invest in them and help them to go further. So yeah, again, a great book, highly recommend. The fourth book I want to talk about is a more of like a pure like business book, and it's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy. And yeah, this is a book that I highly recommend as well, and the concept in the book is actually pretty simple. So what they talk about is that when you start a business and you kind of look for what market to go into or what service you should offer and so forth, then you can kind of see the markets as two different types of markets. You have the Red Sea of competition, where pretty much you have a ton of competitors, everybody's selling the same thing as everybody else, and it's going to be very hard for you to actually sell that because you have so much competition essentially. And then what they talk about in the book is that you should not be in a Red Sea of competition, but you should be in a blue ocean where you have no competition. And you can still go into a market or a niche where there is a lot of competition, but you can just position yourself, your business, your offer, your angle, your service differently than everybody else. So even if you're in a Red Sea of competition, you can just tweak your business slightly so that you create a blue ocean where nobody else is fishing and you're the only one there essentially. So the concept of this book is awesome. It really gets you thinking how you should kind of think about when you start a service-based business, for example, like we do on this channel where we start social media marketing agencies, how to position yourself, how to, if you go into a market where everybody's doing Google ads, well, consider doing YouTube or TikTok ads maybe. Do something differently. So don't be in the Red Sea of competition, but create a blue ocean for yourself instead. And also if you're running like an e-com business, you know, it all goes back to the product. Like what are you actually selling to the market? Do you have something unique? Do you have a patent that nobody else can sell? And in the business world, we also call this for a moat sometimes. So if you think of a castle and then you have the moat around the castle, the moat is basically how hard or how easy it is to replicate what you're doing. So if you take Amazon, for example, they have a huge moat because they're not only an e-commerce business, but they own all of the delivery themselves, you know, all of their warehouses, you know, they have like their own planes, I think, and their own ships to kind of do all of the shipments of the products so they can have super quick delivery times and so forth. So that's kind of their moat. They're not only an e-com business, but they're like, they solve all of the problems, both physically to ship the products, but also internally with like software. They build all of their own software and stuff like that as well, right? So yeah, this is a more so of like a pure business book, but it's obviously a really, really good read. The fifth book that I want to talk about is more so of a pure sales book. It's called Spin Selling, written by Neil Rackham. This book has probably had the most impact on my actual business in terms of like sales and how to like sell my service. It's a bit boring book to read, to be honest, and I think they could rewrite this book in a little bit better way, because Neil Rackham, it's basically wrote this in the 80s, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and it's a very heavy book. Like when you read it, it's not the best book explaining spin, in my opinion. The concept of spin is very simple. Spin basically stands for situation, problem, implication, and need payoff. And it's basically a selling technique when you're selling services or products that are more high-end, basically products that are expensive. So you're not selling like commodities like shoes or something like that, but more so when you sell more expensive stuff, a high-ticket service or whatever now might be. Because when you sell commodities or shoes, you can use very like simple selling techniques. For example, that you assume the clothes. You ask the buyer, for example, all right, so that's great. Do you want the red ones or the blue ones? Even before they have even decided, right? So you kind of expect that they are going to buy. That doesn't really work when you do more high-ticket sales. Then you need to use another selling technique, and that's spin. So it's basically how you ask the right type of questions on a sales call when you do more high-ticket sales. So S, it's basically situation questions. You ask the prospect about their current situation. Okay, please tell me a little bit more about your business. What are you currently doing in terms of advertising? When did you start your business? What does your sales process look like right now? How do you do advertising, etc., etc. Basically questions to figure out their current situation. Then we have problem questions. These are basically just questions to identify a problem with this prospect. So for example, okay, so what are you doing in terms of advertising right now? Yeah, we're doing Google ads. Okay, is that working out for you or not? No, it's not working that well. Okay, so now you have identified the problem, then we can identify another problem, and so on and so forth. So that's problem questions. And then we have implication questions. So an implication question is basically a question that you ask to kind of pour salt into the wound or scratch the wound. You basically identify a negative or a problem, and then you make the negative bigger. So for example, again, okay, so what are you doing in terms of advertising? Situation question. Yeah, we do Google ads right now. Okay, so now you've kind of identified a problem as well, and then you can ask them, okay, so how is Google working for you right now? Yeah, it's not working that well. Okay, why isn't Google working that well for you? That would be an implication question, because now you start to scratch the wound. Yeah, well, we're getting leads and they're super expensive. Okay, how much do you pay per lead? And why do you think that's affecting your business in a negative way, buying duplicate and very expensive leads? That's also an implication question. Identifying a negative and make it worse, essentially. And then we have the final piece of question, which is a need payoff question. That's basically the opposite to an implication question. You identify positive. For example, where do you want to grow your business to? Yeah, I want to grow it to $3 million per year. Okay, why do you want to grow it to $3 million per year? Or how would things change in your business if you got to $3 million per year? Or how would things change in your life, in your personal life, if you got to $3 million per year? That's a need payoff question. You basically identify positive, or make sure that they kind of think about the positives if they would get there, essentially. Because the whole thing behind spin, kind of the whole methodology or the theory behind spin, is that it's a lot more powerful if I ask you something and you tell me why a certain thing is good. That's a lot more powerful than me just telling you how good our solution is, right? So spin has completely changed how I do business, how I do sales. I have made a ton of money from this simple book. Again, it's a pretty boring read, to be completely honest with you, but I still recommend that you read. You know, you have a ton of graphs and, you know, a ton of like studies that they made, yada, yada, yada. So I highly recommend to buy it, read it, also buy it on like Audible or something so that you can listen to it simultaneously. But then remember that the concept is pretty simple. It's basically what questions you ask on a sales call. And in my free SMMA course, I basically help everybody that goes through that free course how to do spin. And I teach it in a little bit more easier way, kind of how I just explained it, and how you create questions for a social media marketing agency and so forth. The fifth and final book that I want to talk about is The Common Sense Investing, written by John C. Bogle. He's the creator of index fund investing. And I'm no investment genius, but investing is super important when you start a business and as you become an entrepreneur, because as you start to make more money, instead of just having the money in your bank and having inflation just eating up the money, and if you run the service-based business like a social media marketing agency, let's say, where you have very high profit margins, you're going to build up quite a lot of cash in the bank. So then the question becomes, okay, what should I do with the money? A lot of new entrepreneurs, they take out the money and buy a bunch of useless stuff, a bunch of liabilities essentially. Maybe you buy a new super expensive car, or you buy a bunch of clothes, or you just do a bunch of, you party a ton, or whatever now might be, right? And investing is something that I started to learn more about like a year or 1.5 years ago, and I really started to think about my plan, like what's my future. And that's when I read this book about John C. Bogle, and he basically talks about index fund investing. And I'm not giving any investment advice here at all, but I highly recommend that you read this book. And it's basically how you can invest your money in a smart way, basically following the market. And I'm not going to go too deep into this video, but basically like at the S&P 500, for example, the US market, it has gone up by like 10% on average since it started, and inflation is like 3% or something like that, right? So basically what you do in an index fund is that you're just betting on the US market, and you're basically just following the US market as it goes up, instead of doing like value investing like what Warren Buffett does, for example, when they're trying to beat the market, trying to buy a stock when it's very cheap and then sell it when it's very expensive. So this is just a very easy way to invest your money when you start. A lot of people, you know, talk about S&P being like boring or whatever. You want to invest money into like cryptocurrencies and make a ton of money quick and so forth. That's a completely another investment strategy. I really like the index fund investing because it's a long-term play. I can start to put away money that I make in my business right now, and I can save that until I'm older, like I'm 65. And you also get this compound effect over time. So if you haven't heard about like the compound effect and how it works, I highly recommend that you check out, like do a Google search or do a YouTube search. For example, S&P 500 compound effect over 30 years or 20 years. And pretty crazy how money grows over time with the compound effect. And yeah, you know, I'm sure you know about Warren Buffett, but Warren Buffett has written his own testimonial of this book right here. So it said, rather than listen to the siren songs from investment managers, investors, large and small, should instead read Jack Bogle's little book of common sense investing. So yeah, this is a real deal. Highly recommend that you read this book as well if you're somewhat interested in getting into some investing as well. All right, so that's pretty much it for today's video. It's a bit different to what I normally do on this channel. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and following along by subscribing to this channel. I'm releasing a video every single day, 5 shorts and basically 2 longer form videos like this one. You can also check out my free course that I have. It's a completely free social media marketing agency course where I help people to go from zero to at least $10,000 per month. Again, completely free. We also have a community. We also have weekly Q&A calls. And my goal is that I want to help millions of people around the world to become financially free, quit the jobs that they hate, and be able to do what they want with their life, essentially what I did when I started out. And these books that I just went over, if you're serious, you know, definitely go through the course that I'm releasing. Again, it's 100% free. But if you want to go the extra mile, like at least buy Think and Grow Rich and read that book. And I would also highly recommend to read the book by Alex Hormozi, $100 million authors. But yeah, again, that's it for this video. Check out the free course, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.